Good evening to the folks at home and welcome to See You at USC on Wednesday night. My name is Dan Toomey, filling in for Mackie tonight, and my guest is Dr. Rohit Varma. He is the Dean of the USC Keck School of Medicine. It's bound to be a great interview. You're not going to want to miss it. Stick with us. Much for sticking with us here. Once again, my name is Dan Toomey, filling in for Mackie tonight at See You at USC. And joining me is Dr. Varma. Doctor, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's really a pleasure to have you.
Glad to be here, Dan.
So now, just for the folks at home who may not be aware of who you are, you recently became the USC, the Dean of the Keck School of Medicine at USC. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And so now, just for some introductory biographical information, let's go back to the beginning and where it all started for your interest in medicine. I know you attended school in Delhi, correct?
Correct.
And so where was the bridge first built to Los Angeles? Because that's quite the path.
It is. So I was born amongst many physicians. My dad was a physician.
Really?
My aunts and uncles are. My uncle is also an eye doctor, which is what I ended up becoming, in fact. So when I came here, I had finished my MD school, and I was interested in vision, and I started to train here in vision. I trained on the East Coast, and then I came to USC for some specialized training.
Sure.
And I was going to go back and get a job on the East Coast, but then USC wanted me to stay, and
this is
I've
an offer you
stayed.
couldn't refuse.
That's exactly
the weather's
right.
a little bit nicer.
Yes, but USC is a special place.
Really?
It is.
So what makes you say that, I suppose?
The people.
Really?
We have some of the most amazing people, particularly in medicine and in many other areas, in fact, which can be brought to bear on medicine. So engineering, cinematic arts,
Sure.
physics, engineering. All kinds of areas, in
Yeah.
fact. And so to try and bring those people to work on problems related to health and medicine is what is special about SC, because there's a huge collaborative,
Really?
cooperative, feeling, in fact, amongst individuals out here who want to pitch in
Really?
and work with each other. So, yeah.
Sure. I mean, and how does that, I suppose, how does that assist you in your research, being part of a community that works together so much? I mean, as opposed to working on the East Coast, have you found it easier to conduct research, or because I feel like it's very interesting that you have people coming in from other crafts or other. I mean, how does that add to what you do?
Right. So one of the key areas or key themes in medicine now is all about convergence. And convergence means that when you bring disparate areas together to bring them to bear on health issues. So, for example, you can have engineers work on devices which can help people do various tasks.
Exactly.
You can have people who are doing work in cinematic arts, who are doing, VR and so on, where where they can then use that to treat people that have depression and other conditions. So there are many, many similar themes which are being done in other fields, but if you can actually bring them to bear on a problem in medicine, there can be a unique solution which ordinarily
Sure.
you can't just find just doing medical things, if you will.
Exactly. And you felt like USC was one of the only places that offered that kind of convergence.
Well, there aren't very many universities in the world where there are more than 18 professional schools.
Exactly,
all the
yeah.
way from the arts to cinema to engineering to medicine. I mean, there are just a huge host of areas which can be brought to bear on medicine and health.
Sure. And so, I mean, fast forward a few years of experience here at USC, and now you're in the position of dean. I mean, did you expect Did you expect to end up in this position
Never
initially?
expected.
Or so walk us through hearing about. I mean, it was an offer, correct, to become the dean?
Correct.
And what was your initial response to that?
Well, I was just, I felt an incredible honor and a privilege to have been asked to serve in this role.
Sure.
There are some amazing people in medicine, and to be able to work with them and lead them into what Keck will become is just an honor. So I just was thrilled.
Yeah, and I would love to talk about that, actually. You mentioned what Keck will become. And I would love to hear more about what is your future vision for the Keck School now that you're in this new position.
Right. So we have sort of 3 major missions.
Sure.
Education, research, and clinical care. And for each of those, there is a vision of where we want to go.
Absolutely.
But the overall vision is to converge the strengths of USC, to bring them to bear on innovation and creativity in health and medicine, ultimately to serve our diverse communities. That's the overall vision of our school and where we want to go. On education, we have one of the most rigorous, 4-year stints that anybody does in education.
Sure.
I mean, it is an extraordinarily difficult, lots of hard work over that period of time, where you go from being just a student to becoming a physician,
Absolutely.
one who can now take care of patients.
Yeah, and thank you for putting them through that process, because I know that my physicians now are well educated. Thank
They
goodness.
absolutely they are, in fact. And so, in the past, the way that we would train physicians was that they would, in their first 2 years, sort of take, classes, get sort of slide reviews, videos, and so on, then take tests, pass those, and then go into the clinic.
Sure.
Well, what has changed is that the amount of facts which are required for a physician to learn has grown exponentially.
Really?
It's simply not possible now for a physician to know all the facts about all the diseases that there are. So what we have had to do is we have to do what is called as flipping the classroom, which means that now you need to look at all the slides and notes and videos and so on ahead of time. And when you come to class, you have to learn how to apply those.
Oh, okay.
How to then learn a particular skill set to problems in health and medicine. You also have to learn how you can access data and information and utilize it to treat patients. So you may not remember every, the dose of every drug, and so on.
But you have to know how to get that information.
Correct. It's exactly right. And how you can apply it to a particular patient and their condition.
That's interesting.
2, one of the things which we will be doing more of is using simulation. So you have models that are essentially live, very much like what you would find in a live human being. And these are electronically created, human beings and so on, where you can learn how to operate on them.
Really?
You can learn how to detect various diseases. You can learn how to perform surgery. You can essentially learn anatomy of those organs.
That must make it, I hate to interrupt you, but that must make it so much more accessible to students.
It is. And it's easier because you can access that same thing over and over again. And sort of learn how to excel at a particular skill because you can try and do it over and over again. Which in the past, the way it would work was you would see see a senior physician do a particular task, then you'd do it, and then you'd teach it someone. And all of that would be live. So, now...
Wow, that sounds like a lot of pressure.
Now you can train on these, simulation areas, in fact, excel your skill and then go and do it on a patient.
Wow. That's
But those are two.
Sure.
Third, in education, in fact, we need to put our students earlier on into the clinic so that they
Really?
can begin to see very early on the course of disease and what happens over time
okay.
in these patients, and learn how to treat patients not just during that one time or that one episode when they see them, but once they're in the clinic over a period of time, they see what happens prior to them being admitted, when they are admitted, when they go home, when they come back into the
Okay.
in fact outpatient clinic again. So they see the entire course of disease and not just the one little piece, which is when they would be admitted into the medical
Sure.
center, in fact. So those are the changes in education.
Well, it sounds like you guys got a pretty good mapped out plan for the next few
Well,
years.
we do.
Yeah.
In research, it's as I was saying, we need to bring about convergence, which is we need to bring about areas such as engineering, computer science, physics, chemistry, to solve problems in health and medicine. And these are diseases that are conditions which really cost us in a huge way, not just in terms of money, but in terms of its impact on an individual's life. So, for example, Alzheimer's disease, major problem now, it's going to only grow. It's going to become one of the leading diseases that's going to cost us in a huge way in the next 10, 15 years.
So next 10 to 15 years.
Exactly right.
Really?
So we're going to need to bring to bear, for example, ways of imaging the brain so that we can detect it early.
Okay.
So if we can detect it early, we can treat these people early.
And what schools would you work with if you to reach that goal?
So we would have schools that include engineering,
Sure.
computer science. We would have schools that deal with chemistry, because we'd want new ways to, in fact, treat people.
Absolutely.
All of those would be, would help us solve this condition.
Yeah.
So, so Alzheimer's is just one of many examples, in fact, where we can bring to bear multiple areas, in fact, to detect and treat conditions in fact early. Similarly, cancer. Similarly, stroke, blindness. Many of these sort of conditions which have a huge impact on people's lives and how they actually live. If we can impact them early on and prevent the loss of function of the brain or vision or hearing or their heart, and it will have a major impact on their lives. So that's what we're all about. Trying to help people live better lives is what we're all about.
It seems like that can only be done through this communication with other schools at USC.
That's that's where the innovation and creativity lies. That when you bring disparate areas to bear, there is friction which is created, which can then send off sparks of creativity, which is where we can find new solutions, in fact.
Absolutely. Well, we have to go to a quick commercial break if you wouldn't mind, but I would love to hear in the second half more about the specific experiments and research that are going on at the Keck School, if you wouldn't mind sticking with us if you have time.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, for Dr. Varma, my name is Dan Toomey. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Thank you very much for sticking with us throughout the break. My name is Dan Toomey, once again for See You at USC on Wednesday night. And Dr. Varma, the Dean of the USC Keck School of Medicine, is here with me. Once again, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. So a lot of what we talked about in the first half focused on the goals of USC moving forward in terms of medicine, and you mentioned convergence a lot, working with the other schools for your research. And just to narrow it down a bit, I would love to hear more about future developmental research that the Keck School is working on, if you wouldn't mind elaborating upon some.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm going to deal with sort of 2 or 3 conditions in
Sure.
that here. So one of them is people that have a degenerative condition of the eye where they become blind. And what our physicians and engineers have done is they've been able to put a retinal chip into the eye, which then allows these people who are otherwise blind, they're now able to see. So in the past, they could not actually, they could barely see light.
Sure.
Well, now they can see large shapes and objects and can actually walk and ambulate on their own.
Through a chip that's surgically placed in their retina?
Through a chip which is placed in the eye. Wow. Because what happens is that it is able to then get signals from a camera, from eyeglasses which they wear.
Okay.
Those are transmitted to the chip, and then they go from there directly to the brain.
Really?
And the individual is now able to see shapes and objects and so on, which they could not see before. Now, that has already been FDA approved and has already been implanted in many, many individuals.
Really?
All right. What we're now doing is, what we want to do now is use a chip which has greater sensors, so the quality of the image is much more sharper and clearer. And what we want to add now is color. So as of now, it was essentially shadows, shapes, but essentially it was black, white, and gray. What we now want to add is color. So that is one example, biblical essentially, of making blind people see.
Wow.
Another example.
Sure.
We have now done studies and introduced stem cells into the spine of people who were otherwise completely paralyzed.
Really?
And once you introduce these stem cells into their spine, they're now able to move their arms. How amazing is that?
And when did this start? I mean, how long has this been in development?
It has these take 15, 20 years. It's
Sure.
a long time, because you have to go from trying these out in animals to then
Absolutely.
to humans and so on. And that takes a long period of time, in fact. But these have been in evolution for a long time. So, for example, one of the things which we are doing now is, in order to find replacement organs. So some of the organs don't work after a while, and you need to transplant, for example, kidney from another individual who has it working fine into one who has a bad kidney, for example. We are now at the point where we are able to create a kidney in a petri dish from stem cells.
From stem cells?
Correct.
Wow.
Again, that involves the use of not just of stem cells, but involves use of engineering, use of imaging.
It must be such a meticulous process.
That's exactly
It's not
right.
like kidneys can be mass produced by.
No.
Yeah, sure.
No. So these are the kinds of innovations, in fact, which are occurring, which I think are going to change the
Absolutely.
way that we live and stay in a state where we can work and do good. So
Absolutely. And I think something I'm interested in is in moving forward, what would the accessibility be like for some? I mean, you mentioned the microchip earlier, and right now you said it's being distributed to a couple hundred or so people. Moving forward, do we see that accessibility becoming greater for people? Like,
yes.
And what's that process
correct.
like?
So the chip actually is approved by Medicare, so which is available to everybody in the U.S. who's 65 years and older, and so they can get the chip, in fact. But it works only in in individuals who are almost completely blind. So it's not. It can't be put in people,
It's not some magical
who can see pretty well but want to see.
It's not just going to improve
No.
your vision. It's rather just the restoration of shapes.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. And for people who are blind from a particular degenerative condition. Now, we're now trying that chip and others in people that have other forms of eye disease. But that again will take many, many years, in fact, for us to get it to, in fact, apply and work well in others.
Sure. And so these are you working in conjunction with USC students on these type of projects?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. All of these, in fact, we have engineers and others, in fact, that work with us at Keck. And we have many, many PhD students and others who help us develop these things.
Sure. And so given that a lot of applications, or rather acceptances, were just given out to many future Trojans who will be joining your school next year. And so if you have either some advice or really an opening message to those students, what is it, given your new position as dean?
So we get over 8,000 applications.
Really?
And we accept 186 students.
Good ratio.
It's less than 5%.
Wow.
Okay, so it's hard to get into the, the med school.
Sure.
But what I would say is that if you have a passion for helping others, USC Keck is the place to be.
Really?
That's what we're all about. We're all about trying to help people in our diverse communities to live better lives, in fact. And so we at Keck now are not just providing care for all the people that have the most complicated diseases, because that's what our specialty is. We provide care to people that have the most difficult and complex conditions, in fact, in the U.S.
I mean, as we mentioned earlier, you're providing, a stem cell solution to people who are normally paraplegic.
Correct.
I think that just alludes perfectly to what you're saying.
Right. So we're all about treating the most difficult conditions.
Absolutely.
And so we want the best students to come to us and train with us and learn, and then go out there, in fact, and be of help and service to people that need our help. I mean, we're all about that, in fact.
Sure.
So.
And I think that's interesting, just connecting back to what you said earlier about your upbringing. You grew up in a family of people in the medical field. I mean, was that a lesson that from an early age was instilled on you, that say, like, hey, this is about really helping people?
Yes, but also, I come from an Indian family where, that's your only option.
Really?
You become a doctor. That's it. In fact, I mean,
so
your
the lesson
mom and
kinda had to
dad
come
pretty
hand in
much.
hand with that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I would love to hear about the difference, I suppose, then, between going to medical school in India and going to medical school here. I mean, how are not just the lessons, but the whole atmosphere different?
Right. So basic medical training is pretty much the same.
Sure.
I think where we excel here in the U.S. is research and innovation, creativity. That, I think, has been just amazing, and it's better than anywhere else in the world.
Really?
So if you want to make new innovations, if you want to do creative things, if you want to do research, if you want to make a difference by trying to find new ways to treat people with disease, there's no better place than to do training here in the U.S., in fact, because we have the most amazing research.
Sure.
We have the most amazing set of instrumentation, of resources available anywhere in the world, in fact. And so if you want to do that creative aspect, and as I said, what's amazing about USC is we have all these other disparate areas which are where we have experts in almost all of them, amazing experts, world-renowned experts, in fact, in engineering and computer science and what have you. This is the place to come to learn to do that creative aspect of medicine.
And does USC, I mean, we've talked a good amount about stem cell research, but does USC primarily innovate through stem cells? Or, I mean, what other methods are they using in their research?
So there are a whole series of methods. So we innovate through brain imaging. We innovate through biomedical engineering. We innovate through stem cells, through digital health, through multiple other areas, in fact. So stem cells is just one
Sure,
aspect of
it's
it.
just scratching the surface.
Right, right. But there are many, many, many other areas. In fact, we innovate through studying large populations of people, in fact, epidemiology and so on. So many, many different areas, in fact, where we have extraordinary expertise in.
And so now we have just a few minutes left here. We actually have 1 minute left. And I would love to ask you as our final question, from somebody who's had such an extensive career in the medical field, what is your advice to upcoming students who are just entering the medical realm of their studies?
What I would say is find your passion and follow it.
Really?
Because there is so much in medicine which you can do. You know, you can be a physician and treat patients. You can be a physician and someone that does creative things, maybe in the lab, maybe in how you deliver care, maybe in other areas. You can do that. Or you can train as a physician but end up doing just research.
Really?
So whatever path you want to take, whatever your passion is, follow that.
And it seems as though USC offers all of those opportunities and more.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you very much. We're wrapping up now, but it was really such a pleasure to have you on. We really appreciate it. Once again, this has been See You at USC on Wednesday night. My name is Dan Toomey, and thank you very much for watching. Tune in tomorrow.